Hello, I am Dr. Jim. Today, we're going to deep dive into understanding of how we interact between our physical body and the intellectual part of this consciousness or energy we call unified or quantum field. We have this knowledgeable expert, Ken Kloss. He has been studying under the Dr. Joe Dispenza, brilliant doctor, and over I think over 10 years, very deeply understanding of this field of the medicine, energy medicine frequency. So he's going to explain to us how this physical body interact this energy field, which we are spiritual being having a physical experience. So we cannot deny that we are more than physical body, right, Ken?
Oh, I so much agree, Dr. June. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have been studying for quite some time with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I love his teachings. My background, 30 plus years, is in engineering. And so I take complex systems and break them down into digestible, understandable, and logical ways of learning. So we're going to talk about today some pretty complex stuff. But the cool thing about that is it's actually every one of us has the ability to utilize what we're going to talk about in terms of energy, and everybody does it anyway. We're just going to bring more consciousness, more awareness to how that's being done.
Yes, absolutely. Our theme always has been expand your awareness. If you don't have this level of awareness, this is where we feel stuck, right? We're suffering all the time. Why we suffer? Because we have a lack of those awareness, isn't it?
Oh, I so much agree. The knowledge is power, right? And knowledge about self is self-empowerment. So if we are self-empowered through some knowledge, through some basic understandings, I mean, we don't need to know quantum physics to understand that we're interfacing with the quantum field, right? I mean, and the energy is all around us. We don't need to understand that every single form of what we think or see as matter is actually just vibration or energy in motion. So we don't need to know all that, but if we understand some principles, some concepts, we can understand how we can move from suffering into homeostasis.
Yes. Yeah, from survival to thrival.
I love it. From the sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight to the parasympathetic system of rest and digest. This is our idea of what we're going to be talking about today. And I know that energy is all around us, and it has. What we're going to talk about here, from what I understand, we're going to talk about its intelligence. So you tell me where we're headed.
Yes. So I really love the idea of a previous episode. One of the doctors talked about the ancient wisdom called the chakra medicine. And chakra medicine is all about this. There's a 7 chakra in the body. From the top, we can go from top to bottom, right? The bottom is like more survival energy, which is the root chakra, all the way to the top crown chakra, which is thrival energy. But this is one ancient philosophy understanding of this chakra. They have been talking about it thousands of years. However, Dr. Joe, Ken, you can explain to us how that ancient wisdom can really translate into the modern science, how this really applies to our physical body.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we understand these centers, also known as chakras, let's break them down as energy centers. And you mentioned coming from the top down. Let's go from the bottom up for a moment, because as the light frequencies change in frequency from the slowest version of light, the light spectrum, which is red, or even below our visual cortex, which is infrared, all the way up to violet, which is the highest frequency of light, or beyond our visual acuity, which is ultraviolet. So when we increase frequency of energy, we actually change the colors of light if we're looking from the spectrum of the speed of light. So the body is kind of organized similar ways, from our survival center being a lower frequency of energy, which is the root center, or root chakra is known in the ancient traditions. But if we start from the lower center, around the pelvic area, there are systems, organs, cells that are organized into this center. and they have function, they have purpose. They even have their own intelligence, by the way, because if we look at things, let's just break it down for a moment. We go from the subatomic particle. Let's go from the tiny to the big for a minute. Let's just
love it.
Let's lay out a little bit of a roadmap, right? So we go from the subatomic particle, things that are way beyond what we can see or even fathom most of the time. And then we start to organize those subatomic particles into electrons, right? Which are now more of another subatomic area, but now start to be some content in which it starts to we see some sort of intelligence. So an electron has a center and it has some orbiting areas around it, some rings around it, but there's something that keeps that together. Like what is exactly keeping this electron within itself and not just like evaporating into nothing, right? So if we take these groupings of electrons and now we put them together and we start to build them into cells. Now look at this for a moment. We've gone from really tiny to almost really tiny to tiny, which is the cells of our body, right? Then we take these cells, these grouping of cells, and we start to organize them into organs, right? Or systems. And then these systems start to organize bigger and bigger into a body, right? And then these bodies start to interface within their communities, right? Communities become an entire planet eventually, right? So this is the way that we're going to look from the very tiny to the very large, and understanding that there is a relationship, an intelligence that keeps all of this essentially within balance. Now, that's its own natural intelligence. So an electron has its own natural intelligence. So does a cell. Every cell in our body has its own natural intelligence. It's got its own digestive system. It's got its own think system. It's got many of its own. It's got its own excretion systems. It's like its own little life form, right? Every cell within our body is its own little life form. And what keeps that together, right? This is an intelligence of energy. This is also not just an intelligence in energy, but a communication structure between cell to cell, literally operating on those light frequencies that we talked about. So as we start to raise the energy of a center, its frequency, say from the root center, and what its functions are, up into the sacral, which is around the navel area, right? Up into the solar plexus, which is just below the chest bone, to the heart chakra, or the fourth center, which is our heart. There's a lot of energy systems going on in there. Up to the fifth center, which is the throat, the sixth around the pineal gland, and then the seventh, of course, which is the crown. So these centers each have very distinct purposes, very distinct intelligence, very distinct order. And the energy of these centers has a frequency to it, right? Lower vibration, just like lower vibration, light energy, closer to red. Higher vibration, light energy, closer to purple. Same thing with these energy centers. They're survival centers. The first three, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, are really around survival, around our basic needs, right? From reproduction to digestion, to essentially our will within our life, within the world, right? So these first three are the survivals. The fourth center, our heart, is where we start to expand energy into a higher frequency. Right?
That's love, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, you feel it, right? I mean, if you just put your attention for a moment on this center, you can actually expand its energy. So, and where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So if we're placing our attention in the root chakra, the survival center, so what we're not getting done in our lives, what we're feeling unsafe about, where our willpower is being suppressed, these first three centers, if we're putting our attention there, we're actually energizing those centers in a way that is disrupting harmony, disrupting order, and creating dis-ease within those centers. So these very tiny particles, I want everyone to understand that there's a very distinct but subtle influence by our thought, by our belief structures, by our energy placed upon them, and we can become disordered and diseased because of that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, previous episode we talked about, everybody just wanted to mention about this PNEI. This, even neuroscientists, they have discovered, they have been speaking about these things, that how P as a psychology, our thoughts, are going to influence to the N as a neuron, the brain, the nervous system. Then going to the E as the endocrine system, which is all the hormone center. It's a gland in each those energy center has the hormone center itself, endocrine centers. And then I come down to immune system, how body interact with this outside and inside, interface between outer world, inner world. So we have this amazing intelligence has been discovered that as a through the neuroscientists. This is what they came talking about, really reflecting how this chakra energy center that has this intelligence, the communication between our mind into the physical body.
Exactly. And so let's look at again back to some of the tiny and the subatomic particles and energy itself. So what is mind? You just mentioned something that I've loved to unpack a little bit, because mind is the brain in action. Let's just look at it that way. So our brain does certain things automatically, such as sending pulses to keep our heart beating, our food digesting, the elimination systems operating, interpreting content from our senses, what we see, think, what we feel, smell, touch, interpreting that content. And the brain is doing all these actions and interactions. But there's another component, essentially, which is mind. And mind is these, we'll just think about it, internal thoughts. Anybody have ever any internal thoughts, right? You ever hear this little mind going on, this little voice in your head? So this is mind. And mind is not only this what we see as conscious or hear as conscious voices in our head or see conscious content through our senses. Mind is also subconscious. Mind also has a living, acting system that has been built since birth, well, actually even before birth, but we won't go there right now. But since birth has started to build an understanding of survival. That's its main purpose. The mind is to keep this organism, this body, its host alive. And so it builds very particular belief systems, or I should say behaviors, patterns, memories, content in the subconscious level that keep you acting, believing, and being in a certain way so that you can survive. Now, some of those survival mechanisms were created under traumatic conditions, under unsafe environments, under, let's say, something at least we could define as duress or stress of some sort. So these programs, which are literally programs, sub-programs within the brain or the mind, keeps us moving and acting in certain ways. And those specific ways then, again, influence these energy centers we're talking about, because there's still mind, which is subconscious and conscious, that is interfacing with these systems, with these energy centers. So I love this quote. There's a quote by Michael Singer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Michael Singer. He's an author. He writes the book called Untethered Soul. And it's a beautiful book around understanding the mind, our inner roommate. I highly suggest and recommend that book, right? The inner roommate. Mm-hmm. And he's got this quote. He says, billions of amazing things happen every moment, and you're not doing any of them. So planets stay in orbit, galaxies spiral through space, and our physicists tell us that quantum fields are emanating subatomic particles that combine together to create everything we see. In other words, matter, right? But we're not doing any of that. I mean, who's doing all that, or what's doing all that? So I want to bring your attention to, there's a very specific intelligence that is interfacing with us as a being, but also us as a mind. And this mind, like I said, this mind is the brain in action, is interfacing with this body, which is an emotional being having expressions. And, thought is to the brain as emotion is to the body. And the two really interface. And again, this is Dr. Joe's practice and teaching a lot about the practicality of this mind-body interface, this awareness. And it's very, very important that I think that we unpack this subject and really see how it's affecting these energy centers.
Yeah, that is so true. That because those amazing intelligence that we have, we're not really aware, but it is there. Otherwise, there's no perfect organization as a planet, right? The galaxy, the universe, everything, the beautifully orchestrated, and there's what we call fractals, where the mathematical order keep happening behind the scene, right? So once we start tapping into discovering those fractal, the natural law, universal law, then this is where we can really tap into more about coherence. When you become disorder, how can you go back to the order, which is the homeostasis that we feels like a thriving rather than surviving, right? So previously we talked about many people suffer from all the traumas. That trauma, it is the mind perceiving as a trauma, but then they're sending the signal as an emotional stagnation, conflict, and stuckness in a certain area. So this is where the Dr. N, the previous episode, talked about each chakra representing different emotion, which they're communicating through the signal, through the hormones. Right? When you excess those, anytime excessively send the signal or depletion of the energy of any centers, prolonged period of time, then that creates this disorganized in cell activities. Then becomes the disease, the chronic disease. This is all we're suffering, right? Many people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you let's look at. I know that you guys have talked about these chakras and stuff. If we look at these as systems for a minute, let's just maybe run through them real quick to kind of get a blueprint of what's going on there. Because again, there are emotions stored there. There is content stored in every cell. With every system. And then there are programs within the mind, within this belief structure, within this thought pattern that actually go to work to energize and to engage these different centers. So if we just go back to the first root center for a second, the first center is essentially in the pelvic area, which controls reproductive system, all of the lower bowels, that stuff. It's situated basically at the base of the pelvic floor. And so think about what's in there. This is the place in which life is created. I mean, quite honestly, that's where life is created. These lower intestinal functions, right? Let's just take some conditions, perhaps, maybe irritable bowel syndrome. Right. Let's just take some of the things that people are experiencing, such as even constipation is a very simple one.
Yes.
So the energy trapped within this center, because of emotional trauma, because of belief structures, because of the way that we perceive life, is going to create this disorder. It's not like that it's something you necessarily ate, right? Or that, and even we're looking at the reproductive system, folks who are trying to create families, start a family, and they live, both the man and the woman or the couple are living under extreme stress in their lives, from trying to make a living to whatever conditions they're trying to do in their life. This stress response lowers the energy in that reproductive center. Mm-hmm. And when we are in that parasympathetic system versus the sympathetic, so if we're in the sympathetic, which is this fight or flight, there's systems that have to go offline, because when we're in fight or flight, we need energy to run, to hide, to fight, right? Or something. We need energy to the muscles and the body to move. And so it has to be taken away. There's a very finite amount of energy within the body. So something has to give up energy in order to divert it into survival. So the sympathetic nervous system says, hey, something's in my world stressing me out. Say it's the couple that's trying to create a family. They don't have enough money. They don't have the support in their lives. They still want a family, but that stress is turning on this sympathetic nervous system. And 3 essential systems go offline. The moment, to whatever degree you're in that sympathetic system, in that fight or flight, there will be an influence on these 3 vital systems that go offline. The number one system that goes offline first, digestion.
Yes.
Digestion. It's not time to digest food when you're stressed out, when you may be, the system thinks that you're being attacked or chased by T-Rex or something. You're going to be food. The number two system is immune system. You don't need to worry about catching a bug or anything like that when you're fighting for your life. And number three, folks, is reproduction. It's not time to create life when you're worried about saving your life. So that stress response shuts down or lowers the energy to that first center, right? And now, creating a family, making a baby is less priority to the body, just to the body. I'm talking about the body is very literal. Our mind makes stuff up. The body just does. So that's the first center, right? Let's if we go up, say to the second center, this is just behind the navel, right? This is the second energy center. This is where our safety, where we feel safe in our life, our security in our life. You know how you get something in your gut, like I just get a gut feeling this is not okay, right? Have you ever done that? You walk into a room and it's like, ooh, my gut doesn't feel good about this. I get a gut instinct, right? This is where it's coming from. It's the center right here. It's the sacral system that has an energy to itself. It's reading and it's writing. It's back and forth from its environment, from your mind interpretation to the body's influence. Back and forth, back and forth. And again, are we safe in our lives? If we're not, what's going on there? Digestion. Remember what I said? When we're in that sympathetic system, digestion has to lower its energy.
Yes.
Can't be online.
It's not priority. Yeah.
It's not priority. And if we move up, now I'm just talking about the survival centers, 1, 2, and 3. We move up a little bit further into the third system. Again, the stomach, intestines. We got a lot of systems in there. We've got kidneys and we've got different adrenal glands. We've got all kinds of things going on within these systems. And when we're stressed out, guess what's going on? The adrenal function is starting to get out of balance. And I'm going to tell you something, people are, their energy systems go out of balance. They feel tired, but their adrenal systems are fatigued and overworked. And so what do? You go for a stimulant, coffee or energy drink or whatever. And all that does is just gets a little adrenaline going into the body, but it's not real, right? So we get out of balance. And these three systems, these first three, are really the ones that we should put a lot of love and understanding, grace and patience into those, and bless them every time. And I love Dr. Joe does this a lot. In fact, you guys can get on board with he's got some great meditations called Blessings of the Energy Centers.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
Yes, we'll put that link later in our quantumdecoder.com/can. So we get a lot of materials about how to do those type of guided meditation, energy center meditation. So you can really start practicing, right? To get out from this survival mode, sympathetic dominance mode into parasympathetic, which is a creation, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So it's going to give us some tip about, I know that all the things happening in the body, number one things, the number one things, what we need to do to really get into this survival mode, into the thrival.
Yeah, I love this. It's let's get to the nuts and bolts. It's not only good enough to know, you got to know how, right? You got to know how to do something. We have a lot of information at our fingertips, but we just don't know really what to do with it all, because sometimes it's overwhelming. So if we're looking at how do we move, how do we engage with this intelligent energy? How do we become a partnership with it? Because the natural state of energy is balance, by the way. Natural state is balance. Otherwise, if you don't have the yin and the yang, the balance between both masculine and feminine, also from between the nucleus and the electrons and the inner and outer parts of the cells. If we don't have balance, then it's disorder. So creating balance, essentially, I like to do a lot of mindful practice, right? Some simple things that we can do that we already have the tools to do. This mind of ours, the constant barrage of content or what's being going on in there, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. The mind is simply a way in which it can make sense of the outside world, so the inside you can survive. So don't fight it. I'm always about listening I used my body as my rudder. The body is the most intelligent organism that you have because it's the tangible matter at the end of the energy expression, the end of the energy expression. And remember, energy has intelligence. So if we will simply believe and surrender to the energy, the intelligence of this energy, then we can know this body will heal. So step one, I am always asking myself to simply allow these thoughts. You don't need to do anything with them, even when they're really bad. I mean, how many of you guys would speak to your friends the way your mind is speaking to you? Probably not, right? There's a lot of negative content going in there, but it's not real. It doesn't mean it's real. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to do anything with it or that it is even real, right? Most of this thought process is a subconscious routine that is just allowed the body to survive. So being aware and knowing these thoughts, you don't have to do anything with them. They're not real. They're just your imagination going on like crazy. And even Einstein said imagination is more powerful than knowledge because, it doesn't have limits. So the imagination, the mind will make stuff up that is so not true. There's without limits, and it knows you very well. So it knows how to steer you, guide you, derail you. And the moment you push up against something that you want to create in your life, something that you've maybe been struggling with, or something you may feel unworthy of, the moment you press up against it and get close to it, the mind's going to go crazy. It's going to go crazy in its way of saying, no, start tomorrow, or no, you don't deserve that, but it's not true. It's not real. This is imagination. So number one, don't let every thought be truth, right? Number two, I love to use breath. I love to use breath. The moment that we slow down our breath, the moment we elongate the breath and really energize the intake and the relaxation of the breath, allowing the body to participate in this breath fully, we will shift this vagal tone. We didn't talk about that much, but there is a whole nervous system tone which regulates sympathetic, parasympathetic, fight or flight, rest and digest. And the breath is our tangible mechanical process that we own. We own it, right? Yes. We don't have to learn much. We don't have to buy anything.
Yes. We do that consciously, but then you have to be consciously. It is unconscious processing, but we have to make into consciously practice to slow down because we are so fast, so shallow, right, under the stress. So we have to retrain them how to do slow breaths, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we first allow the mind to do its thing without it being true. We then start to become aware of the breath. And in order for us to be in that fight or flight state, we have to have a short, shallow, rapid breath, right? That's typical. How many of you guys have ever gotten scared? It's like, there's this convulsing breathing exercise, right? So to slow that down, to literally try to visualize, I don't think about visualize, but just try to experience a breath that goes all the way in to the bottom of your lung and all the way out to the top of your lung. And understand the lungs. I want you guys to just do a little exercise. Find your collarbone, and then reach all the way down and find the lowest rib. That's how big one lung is. You get two of them. So allow that air to go completely into that those full lungs. And just when you fill your lungs, you can't breathe very quickly. And so you just allow that elongated breath to slow your system down, and you'll move over into that parasympathetic and that rest and digest. It doesn't take many. I'm telling you, 5 breaths, 5 good full breaths, taking your time, and you will shift your energy. All right.
Okay.
Number 3, let me tell you one more. Number 3 is movement. I promise you, when you sit stagnant and fester and worry and get all agitated, that stagnant body becomes extremely suppressed. So movement is a very important thing. How many of you guys have been just got up and went for a walk, right? You are I'm frustrated with this project. You throw your hands down. I'm just going to go for a walk, and you feel better, right?
Yes.
This is important. Go out for a walk. stretching, full long movements. I love full long movements because you're engaging the lymphatic system, right? This is a cleansing process within our body that helps the tissues and systems actually eliminate and get rid of toxic burden, including emotions. So allowing yourself to move in very full, long, elongated movements, exaggerate movements. And I'm going to add one more. Is
bonus. Yeah, bonus. Okay.
Is hydration. You know what? Water is the communication system within this intracellular, extracellular systems, these bodies we have. Energy is transmitted via light frequencies through the waters of our bodies, right? And this is how the communication systems in our bodies work. And folks, just 3% dehydration in your body will equate to up to 10% loss of muscle strength, right? That's a big thing.
It's huge.
Big thing, just 3%. So, get plenty of water. And there's some equations out there you guys can look up. But I mean, about half your body weight in ounces of water every day is a really good baseline. If you're more active, more of it's more dry and hot climate. Either of those things you increase your water, but just look for some baselines to start with. And if you're not doing half your body weight in ounces of water every day, I promise you, you're in some form of dehydration. Right?
Wow, that is awesome. I think so. Really important things that even have to be so simple, but they're practical, applicable, and you have to get in action to do it because nobody can do it for you. We have to do it, right? So awareness is great, right? We can expanding awareness, which can help us so much to expand. Now you got to increase the information and knowledge. Now, how are you going to apply those things? That is so amazing. So that's simple 3 steps plus bonus steps. That's so amazing. We're going to put this information into our quantumdecoders.com/CAN, which is abbreviation of a Conscious Awakening Network. And we'll put this our recommendation information, what the Ken suggested. And the more of those content you can receive. So thank you so much, Ken, to help us guide us into this field of how the energies, the matters, how we can transform ourselves into thrival instead of survival.
Absolutely. I love this, and remember the power of the mind. If ever we are in a stress response, find some reason to fall in love with life. Find a reason to fall in love with anything that's going on in your life. If the present moment doesn't look fun, make one up. Remember, the power of the imagination can be worrisome or joyous. So enjoy that.